You seem to have put together a real nice life. You know, you're the CEO of a Barry Diller company, right? You're doing high-end...
Oh, you mean before this, right?
Yes, before all this. You're running
uh-huh.
Q2.
Right.
You're the president of it.
Right.
You have a very comfortable, successful corporate life.
Yes.
You know, he might be a little crazy to work for,
Right.
and you're doing home shopping, which is a little volatile business, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
it's a pretty corporate existence.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a span of like 4 years, 2 children and a startup. Did you like wake up one night at 3 a.m. and say, I'm just going to destroy everything I have?
No, I just got excited about going for it in a different way. Actually Q2 blew up because Barry got bought out. So it blew up like overnight, which is the best thing that ever happened to me because it landed me in a place of, you know, no job and some money to think about what I wanted to do. And I mostly didn't want a job. That was my main motivation. I didn't want a real job at all. I was a new mom.
You didn't want that safe harbor.
I didn't want a safe harbor. In fact, I interviewed for a lot of big jobs like the ones I'd had, and I would always on the way out go throw up in the bathroom. So I thought, I guess that's over. I'm not going to be able to do it. Something very visceral in me thought.
Literally visceral, yeah.
Really visceral. Thought this is.
You would throw up after your job interview?
Yeah, I just couldn't go do it again. It's like that chapter's over.
Because you had been Time Life Video.
Yeah, I had some great corporate experiences. But it was over. That's all I could say. It was over. It may come around again, but it was over for then. And I actually felt, I was very jealous of all my friends who had started the big cable networks, you know, MTV and Discovery. And I thought at the time, you know, the next one I'm going to be there. And I thought, this could be it. And so I did some consulting for AOL because they told me I could come on a day-at-a-time basis. I thought that was about the least commitment I was going to have to make.
Did you have kids at this point?
I had one daughter, a year old.
So you got a year-old?
So look, any sane person would have gone for security and a big paycheck, but
or just ridden that golden parachute as long as you possibly could.
Something in me just, Barry really, who is really annoying to work for, but he was like my halfway house between corporate life and building something. And once I was done, I was like, that's it, I'm going to go do it. I can do this. I can step up to the plate.
With his multimedia vision of the world and where it was going?
Well, you know what impressed me about Barry is that he trusts his own instincts and he doesn't have to run with the crowd. And I would say,
a true entrepreneur.
I would say in creating iVillage, that the main thing that allowed us to be successful is that we saw something early on and went with it and had so many skeptics, I can't even tell you. Probably still have some, although they're all going to be proven wrong. And we just thought, you know, this is going to work because women would give their attention to the internet if it really helped them in their lives. It's that simple. We knew that was fundamental. I mean, I hate computers. I didn't have a computer until about 2 days before I came up with the idea for iVillage. So I knew computers weren't it.
Had you been on the net?
Nothing. I got a computer in January, had the idea for the business in April, and started it, basically in June. So I knew that computers, CNET had its audience, and they were into computers, but I knew there was a group out there that didn't even like their computers or certainly didn't love their computers and really only wanted to know, what is this going to do for my life? And that was our idea.
So you really were your ultimate customer?
Absolutely. Life. We thought
with
this
a toddler
should be
in the next room dumping peanut butter on the cat.
Yes, and I remember the day I thought working at home is not for me. I was going nuts. I was going crazy.
So you're putting in, what, 1 day a week for Steve Case down at AOL?
Oh, 5, yeah. I was doing that pretty full-time. I was doing some work for Discovery Networks. I was having a pretty good time, actually. It was not a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. AOL, on sort of their transition in their business model to commerce and advertising, sort of the next chapter, and Discovery Networks on a worldwide reality theme park that would have been amazing. It was really fun to work on. Just resting my brain, until the next.
Basically did it for yourself.
Yeah, I did actually.
No, I mean, a lot of the important products in the history of technology have been designed by people for themselves.
Yes.
And it just happens to fit with a large body of people out there.
Well, I mean, I was very sensitive about, I think women are at a very amazing point in history where we've gotten everything we've ever wanted and it may kill us. And we're trying to figure out how to manage it and live through it in a happy way.
Let's talk about college. How do you go from Florida to Stanford and get a bachelor's in biology?
I don't know if anyone could trace all these choices I made. Yeah. It was a great major, though. It wasn't really biology. It was really everything we've learned in the sciences and how it applies to our life.
It's one of those Stanford degrees you make up as you go along?
No, the school made it up. All the teachers got tired, all the best teachers got tired of teaching in their deep discipline, and they decided to put together a course for people who would be citizens in the next century. It's actually one of the best things I've ever done because I became literate in all the sciences, not at the level of an experiment in chemistry, but at the level of how is science done? What does it mean? What's going on in all the disciplines collectively? It turned out to be quite great.
So did you pick up a little valley fever while you were out here? Is that where?
No, this is very interesting. I really didn't. It wasn't, I was oblivious of all of it at the time. I was just at Stanford.
Well, something happened, though, because all of a sudden, here you are, you're taking this degree, and next thing you know, you're going to Harvard getting an MBA.
Well, it wasn't quite next thing, 7 years later.
Okay.
I went to the mountains.
So you got a job. Oh, yeah.
I went to the mountains for 7 years, and I taught mountaineering.
With Outward Bound?
With Outward Bound in Knowles. So I led kids in the mountains for 5 weeks at a time. And that was a case of going my own way. I have always more or less gone my own way. I mean, all my friends were filling out applications to medical school and law school, and I just thought, this is not going to happen here.
So where'd you do Outward Bound?
Colorado, Wyoming.
Oh,
beautiful country.
Okay.
Probably the best training I ever could have gotten for the internet. Just perfection, and of course I didn't know it, but.
How so? Hanging from a rope from a cliff face?
No, I mean in
as a
the mountains, what you end up doing is making decisions with very little information that are very important decisions with big consequences, and you have to make them really quickly, and you really have no idea, and you kind of develop your instincts. Like you have to decide, do I get these 20 people over the pass with the storm coming in, or do I not? Do I go for it or not? And of course, you really don't even know what the weather looks like on the other side. So I got really comfortable making tough decisions and making them quickly, and I think in the internet that's turned out to be a very important skill.
Did you go out and do the solo isolation
Lots
trips?
of it. I spent a lot of time by myself in the Grand Canyon and Canyonlands, and but honestly, I prefer in the mountains with people is a lot more interesting. You learn unbelievable amount about leadership and people in the mountains because people are themselves in the mountains. After about 3 days, you see the real item.
So at this point, Candace comes down from the mountain and enters the business world. Now, what possessed you after that to go get an MBA from Harvard?
Well, you know, a lot of people at Outward Bound and Knowles are sort of on their way eventually to medical school or law school or business school. There are some long-term mountain men, but I didn't really see myself as a totally crunchy granola person long-term. So I literally was reading a book one day on a course I'd been on many times, and I just went, it's over. This chapter's done. And I felt like the bear who wanted to go up the mountain to see what was on the other side. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to either be a psychiatrist to CEOs or go to business school. So I called the 5 top psychiatrists to CEOs. And they all said, you'll have much more fun if you go to business school and run a company. So I said, fine, if you guys think so, you're the best guys in the field. So I went to business school.
Give me some anecdotes about going to see Kleiner Perkins. I mean, this was not an era when KP was throwing a lot of money at women entrepreneurs.
And media companies, certainly.
And media companies, too.
Well, it's a funny story. I mean, I really came from a branding background, and I felt that we should treat the people we raise money with as a form of branding, and Kleiner, therefore, had to be on the list. Right. And so we went to Kleiner. They really liked us, but as you said, we didn't quite fit in their model. They got all excited, but then they didn't quite know what to do with us.
Did you fly out to Menlo Park to see him? Or?
Yeah, we met with John Doerr, and then he brought Will Hurst in, and you know, everybody got all excited, but it didn't quite fit. But we basically said, we're not taking no for an answer, and we sort of camped out. And then ultimately we decided the best way to do it was to get all these other people in and let them convince Kleiner to come in, which is what happened. So we're very determined, and Kleiner Perkins has been
Had you ever gone for VC money before?
Partner. No.
So you just drop yourself in the middle of Silicon Valley and you go to the most famous venture capitalist in town, and you camp out on his porch and demand money from him?
Ask respectfully, I would say. But yeah, and I'm so glad we did it. They're phenomenal. I can't imagine not having them as partners. So, you know, we were not kids. I mean, this was an advantage. In fact, when Ted Leonsis handed me the check from AOL, he said, "You're probably too old for this, but I'm going to take a chance anyway." So that, of course, totally inspired me. But the fact that we were older, we'd had a lot of success in our corporate lives, and we had a lot of confidence about meeting people. Although I did learn something about raising money. I thought raising money was sort of like asking for something. And then I realized that the relationship between a venture capitalist and a company is a necessary relationship. They need us as much as we need them, and we offer them as much.
I don't want you to know that.
But I figured that out. So then I felt really that I was giving them an opportunity. I really felt, and then I understood how to do it, okay? Because before I'm not that good at begging. So when I understood that it was more, you know, here's a great opportunity to put your money to work, I could do it. Although I don't know why this happened, but when we started going to see venture capitalists, we started eating steak. Like there was some testosterone thing going on. I don't know what it was, but...
Well, you're going for the jugular, going for blood.
Yeah, we just got, we went on this big steak sandwich thing through that whole period.
Well, I'm curious about the whole world of being a woman entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because it's a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah.
And we see a few younger women trying it now in their early 20s, but until recently, women seem to come to entrepreneurship in their 40s.
Yes.
Not in their 20s.
Sure.
Well, it seems like a lot of men look like entrepreneurs from the day they get out of college.
Right.
What's the difference?
Well, women initially were sort of following in the footsteps of men. This is a path to be successful, and then we all realized, wait a minute, men they're already over this. You know, we're kind of following the wrong trail. So I think that's a lot of it. That women were very focused for a long time, as I was, on how big is my salary, you know, how big is my title. And then I went, boy, the joke is on me, because I ought to be wondering about what have I built in the world and what is my net worth, and how free am I to do what I want. And it was like the light bulb just went on that why was I, going down this path when another one was available?
Did you sense this in yourself early on? I mean, did you
No,
exhibit
I really didn't. Well, I mean, I had.
I probably every famous entrepreneurs, they have lemonade stands, and they have a paper route with 9,000 houses on
Yes.
and all these kind of
Yes.
symptoms of
Yes.
what's coming.
Well, yeah, and when I was young, I was selling embroidered pillowcases to the neighbors, and I was starting little cafes, and I was doing all of that stuff.
What'd your folks do?
My father was a shoe salesman, and my mother was a very frustrated housewife who should have been Kate Graham, really talented woman who ultimately started a newspaper that was very
She started a
successful.
newspaper?
But it wasn't the Washington Post. But had she been let loose at an early age, she would have created the Washington Post. She was
And now where was this?
in Ponte Vedra, Florida, little, backwater
Yeah.
place, but actually a pretty good childhood. I would say one thing about my childhood I think contributed a lot to this was that I grew up on the ocean, and I just was allowed, it was back in the days when I just literally at age 4 I was allowed to wander up and down the ocean all by myself because every neighbor knew us. And I think that sense of unboundedness actually has been my whole life with me and my choices.
Now you're in your late 20s.
Yeah, actually 30. Yeah, I'm 30.
30, yeah.
31 when I got my first real job in the real world.
Well, that's sort of a late entry.
I'm a pretty late bloomer in general. Yeah, definitely.
So what was your first gig?
American Express, which is, whoa.
Wow.
Pretty conservative, huh?
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do. I didn't have any context for the business world, and I briefly considered Apple, which would have been a great fit, but I ended up at American Express for completely,
I don't think you would have wanted to have been an Apple in the mid-19. Well,
maybe not.
yeah, maybe.
Early 80s.
You would have got there just in time for the Macintosh.
Yeah, I would have been a happy camper doing the Macintosh. But anyway, I went to American Express, and it was, of course, I consider it my boot camp in business. It's a very straight-laced culture and very serious and very methodical, very slow, very, protecting a great brand. But what I learned is that branding there just gets in your blood. Like from then on, for the rest of your life, if you have a brand and someone is doing something in your company that's not on brand center, it's like your hair stands up on end. You develop this tremendous sensitivity to what it means to be a brand. And that was worth the 6 years, absolutely. But I was way too serious I was not serious enough for American Express. Temperamentally, I was...
Did you dress like that at American Express?
No, I did not, and that was the problem. And I thought, gee, I would like to actually be a little more myself. So I went to Time Warner, which was closer, more the media space. I built a really good little company there. It was a really good experience. First time I was really in charge. And Time Warner gives people tremendous latitude to develop and to grow.
So you were like a division GM?
Yeah, and it was fantastic. I got to go do deals. I got to run the business, and
You got through the whole business side.
yeah, and I was obsessed with that. I was
control.
obsessed with that. I wanted the whole business. That's what I wanted to learn how to do. When I got to American Express, I didn't really care what job I took. I don't really care because the only job I really care about is being able to run the whole business. So finally I got to do that, and I loved it.
So how did Barry Diller lure you away?
Well, what happened is another time when life was great and why couldn't I just hang out and call it well enough alone. The business was going so well, so of course I was completely restless.
Yeah, but you're doing Emmy Award quality stuff. What'd you do? Just have insomnia one night and turn on, there's QVC, and you say, oh, this is my future?
No, that was not about QVC, believe me. I don't think one time when people asked me what I did, I mentioned QVC. I always
Zirconiums didn't come up in the
I always
conversation?
said I worked for Mr. Diller. I felt that was a brand I could align myself with, but I never said QVC. Although I think he was pretty smart to go chase that direction.
Well, he's got a reputation as a genius.
He is a genius, and he has a tremendous amount of integrity in a lot of unexpected ways. I mean, he's a man who really follows his own internal gyroscope, which I have come to tremendously respect. The reason I ended up with Barry is that I went on a little journey. I wrote a lot of moguls, Geffen, Diller, and I went to see them all. They all called me, and I went to see them all. And I said, I worked for people who were corporate people. They were not founders, and I was very interested, what does it look like if you make something from scratch, like Geffen and Diller had done? What does that look like? And I walked in, and their personal space looked completely different than anything I was used to.
Well, first of all, how'd you get in with these cats?
I just wrote them, and I had enough, what I'd done was interesting enough to people, it wasn't like the end of the world, but it was interesting enough that they agreed just to talk to me, and I didn't want a job or anything, so that makes it easier. But Barry was in his home, working out of his home in this beautiful office, and Geffen had this kind of gorgeous space, and everything about them was different in a way that I thought, this is much more, me.
This is you. Yeah.
This is it. This is much more being a brand that you carry around inside of yourself instead of attaching yourself to a brand was really the idea that captured me. And then Diller offered me a job, and in a way, it was a kind of halfway house between the corporate world and my own.
So you get a full case of the Benz on the way out.
Exactly, and I learned a lot from him that I wouldn't have learned without working for an owner. I learned that you don't throw money at something until you know you've got something. That you let the market speak to you a little before you really spend the big bucks on it.
One of the problems I've seen for 20 years with entrepreneurs is that you construct this organization that you love. It's a reflection of you.
Right.
It gets to a certain size. You get a certain point in your life,
Right.
and the walls start closing in again.
Right.
You realize Well, it's like being on the trail with Outward Bound. You just
Right.
one morning, you know, you're driving to
It's
the
over.
office and you say
Right.
it's over.
Right.
Feel that yet?
Well, oh, not at all. The internet, for someone who's bored easily, just can't recommend a better place to be, because I would give anything to be bored for 1 second, actually, right now. I mean, the idea of going global and the idea of extending this brand out right now. I mean, finally, we're at the point where these small companies get to the point where they have leverage, where people are coming to us to do big deals. We're not pounding on everyone's door begging. And now people will come to us and say, you are the women's brand. What can we do with you? I mean, all these big companies that I've admired my whole life are now knocking on our door. So that's interesting. And the kinds of things we can do with them are so interesting.
There's also just the sheer mass of the company, though.
Well, it's only 280 people.
I know,
it's
but
not
you
too
know,
unbearable.
well, that's
Yeah.
because it's a virtual kind of thing. But
Yeah.
you know, like a manufacturing company, because
Sure.
you'd have 5,000 employees. But now,
Yeah.
eventually, though,
Yeah.
you're going to have 5,000 employees.
Right.
And then when you want to move
Right.
the company, it's like trying to move the Queen Mary.
Yes, I have noticed that once a founder creates a culture, the culture is set. Like if I wanted to change the culture, I would have a difficult time changing it, because it's such a reflection of what we put in place at the very beginning. I would say, though, you know, Nancy and I both came out of corporate lives where we had resources, we had scale. We actually really liked the stage of the company. The startup stage, personally, I don't know if I would do that again. I mean, that whole going to lease space and talking to the...
Well, and how did you do it? I mean, I was looking through this stuff, and I was talking to other people, and you got a 1-year-old in the house,
Right.
which is a full-time experience.
yes.
And to be an entrepreneur
Right.
takes every fiber of your being
Right.
for a couple of years.
Yes.
How did you manage to do both?
I did nothing else. Nothing else. I did not go out to dinner. I did not go on a date. I did nothing else. I did those two things, I think, reasonably well. And I was so exhausted by the end of it. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't have my hair done. I was like fried, to be very honest. So then I adopted another child just because, you know, to make life more interesting. And eventually, about a
Just want to see
year...
how much stress a human body could take at one
Well,
time?
I just have this vision of the life I want, and I'm pretty hell-bent on getting it. But I think what happened about a year ago is Nancy and I both felt we came out from under the rock, you know. It began to be, we had so many good people in the company had a foothold and a leadership position, and we began to come back into the idea of having a life. But I would definitely tell anybody who's not prepared for that, sign your life away for a couple of years, just don't go there. Leading requires that you stay very grounded. You know, and so having a
It's
family
hard to keep your head in the clouds when you're changing diapers.
does that, you know, and it humanizes people, and it makes them, you know, gentler and more compassionate, understand what the rest of the world's going through. So I think all of those things are generally positive. I would, if I had a really high-strung executive, I would tell her, you know, go have a couple kids. I do want to say, when you asked me what I would do next, I don't think it's that soon, but I do want to start a school. And I have a lot of other chapters.
You've been working with some inner city stuff. Prep for Prep. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
What is that?
Prep for Prep takes kids from kids of color from all over New York and gives them an amazing 10-year experience of training them to be in the best prep schools in New York, following them through, you know, almost day by day, helping them get into the very best colleges, and then helping them start their career. It's tremendous.
Well,
And
what was the genesis of that?
well, it's really an urban Outward Bound and its commitment to kids.
Is that how
And-
you got into it?
No, I had to stay off all this stuff for years because, as we pointed out, I was completely underwater and busy.
Right.
And then when I finally surfaced, I wanted to do something with kids. Kids are my passion. You know, I feel kids are the ones we need to worry about.
It was interesting the parallel you drew to Outward Bound.
Well, I don't think Outward Bound per se in the city is the answer. In the city, it's how to get along in the city. And I think Prep for Prep has a notion of staying with people in a community. It's like iVillage. It's a community where people know each other and they support each other for years. It's a mutual commitment. And that's kind of what my life's been about. Outward Bound's about that in the mountains. And I think that way of doing things is very powerful.
Did your passion for children start with children?
No, having children started with my passion for children. Yeah, I'd have 10 children if I could. I don't think I started in time. But I feel training, you know, leaders for this next century is going to be a really interesting job. And I think parents, and I struggle a lot, you know, I don't want to be blasé about being a working mother. I think that there are, you know, so far I think women have liberated themselves. We have to kind of liberate the family. The whole family has to kind of be winners. I don't know if we're quite there yet. I think that our culture has some work to do in making sure the kids don't get the short end of the stick. So I'm very committed to that issue and how we can help.
So you want to start school?
I definitely want to start a school, yeah. I might want to be a minister. I have a lot of things. So hopefully I'll live to be 150.